Welcome back, it's Chris from Exile Gaming. Today we're going to be creating a multi-layered stinger transition. Just a quick reminder before we get started that I do stream on Twitch most days, and I will leave a link, as always, down in the description. Okay, let's just jump in. What is a stinger? A stinger is a way to go from scene A, our gameplay, to scene B, our intermission scene. Scene A, we transition, and the stinger will sit on top of it, and it'll, at some point in time, 100% of our window will be occupied. At that moment in time, whether it's a frame or a certain period of time, we'll swap the two layers out, so it looks like it's been a flawless transition, although it's not. What we're building today is we've got two layers, and a stinger will come in that doesn't occupy 100% of the window, and it will reveal what's behind it. So let's open up After Effects and jump in. Okay, so I've gone ahead and opened up my After Effects, and it's worth mentioning I've left a link to the download in the description, and I've also timestamped everything. So if you do want to skip ahead and look at, how to fix a blinking issue, or how to change the parallax and whatnot, it's all down in the description. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new composition, and that composition I'm going to name Final Render. I'm going to set my width to 1920 by 1080, frames per second is 60, and I'm going to change the duration to let's say 3 seconds. Click OK, and we have got a 3-second window now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to find a wallpaper of some sort that I want to use. So bear with me, and let's just drag that in here. So now I've got a wallpaper and a my final render composition. So what I'm going to do for my first layer is I'm going to select a white, and I'm going to drag a shape that looks something like this. Now what this is going to be the middle of our stinger. So we're going to rotate this a little bit by selecting our layer, pressing R, and dragging to around about 15-16 degrees. I actually like about 15 degrees. I think that works. Okay, but if you wanted something a little bit more dramatic, you could go, 45. Obviously, you're just going to need to expand this. So let's change that to 15. Okay, I'm going to right click, rename, and I'm going to call this stinger. Now a stinger, what we need to do is it needs to transition through points in time. So what I'm going to say is hold shift, drag it all the way across to the right, and I'm going to press P on my keyboard. P brings up my position. If I click on the little stopwatch, and right here I'm at 0 point, so I'll press my stopwatch, and what I'm saying at the very beginning, I want you to be here. Then I'm going to transition somewhere in, so I'm going to move to a point in time. So let's move like 25-30 frames in, and hold shift, click the layer, hold shift, and come in. What I'm going to do is create another point here, and then I'm going to transition to the end of the scene, somewhere around here, and say, right, okay, then I want you to be off. Now the reason I've done this is because I want like a nice effect to come in. See how it's quicker to come in and then slower to go out. So there's two ways that we can do this. One is we can click on our layers, press F9 to easy ease. If you don't see that, you can click keyframe and easy ease if you don't have F9 on your keyboard. Then that will allow us to bring up a graph editor. Select our layer, and if you don't see this, what you want to do is right click, and you'll probably have something like this. So you just want to make sure you've got edit speed graph. These points on here indicate the speed in which that layer, that animation is happening. So right now the animation is nothing, but then it gets faster and faster and faster. It's the fastest point, then it starts slowing down. Likewise, it'll go off. So what I want to do is I want to kind of create for demonstration purposes, let's just click on our point there. What we're going to say is we're going to have a slow intro, then it's going to get quite quick, and it's going to come to like almost a stop, and then we're going to have slow middle, and I want it to just gradually get quicker. So comes in and then sips off. That is quite slow for jumping off, so what I'm going to do is we're just going to click it back here, and I'm just going to bring my keyframe in a little bit. So I'm happy with that. I think it's got this nice fluidity to it. It doesn't just jump straight off the screen. We could probably increase this one as well. Let's say So it flies in, stops for a second, then goes off. The reason I want it to stop for a second is because I want something in the background to kind of like catch up with it, so it looks like there's like a parallax feel going on. So I'm going to go ahead and click back into my layers. So I've clicked off the graph and I've got my layer. So if we transition again just to demonstrate, great. Now what I'm going to do, the crux of everything that we're doing here is to create a transparent background on one side and a chroma key on the other side. So we've got a transparent background here, our stinger comes in, which is here, and then we need to create a chroma key on the right hand side. That chroma key is what's going to be able to reveal what's below it. So I'm going to go to the beginning, I'm going to create a new layer, I'm going to select the green, green is 00FF00, and I'm going to create a layer which is bigger than my actual window, my actual canvas. So I'm just going to minimize that a little bit, bring that down, something along those lines. The reason I want it bigger is because when we drag the layer off the screen, I want it still to be occupying it. I don't want to finish and have like a little bit which is showing the transparent background, which means we won't be revealing the background for this point. So when it gets to the other end of the screen, I want it to be here. So we're at the beginning of our source here, so I want to hold shift and bring it all the way across. So what we've got is our chroma key sits within our stinger. Now right now, if I right click and rename this to chroma, we've got our chroma key, but it's on top. Just drag that layer down below, and what we'll have is the stinger sits on top of our chroma key. Then I'm going to grab this little piglet tool here, and I'm going to parent my chroma key to the stinger. Now I'm parenting that because when the stinger moves, I want my chroma key to move. So if I bring it in, my stinger, my chroma key comes with it. Brilliant. So what we'd have in this instance is we'll have our gameplay, scene A, we'll have our stinger, and then we'll have what's revealed beneath it, which is going to be scene B. So that's how we get that effect going on. So obviously right now we have got like a nice cool effect, but the stinger itself, like if we left this and we could work with this and this would work. However, the stinger itself, let's add some animations to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in the wallpaper that I've got. Let's just right click and rename that to wallpaper. From there, actually let's just resize that because that's quite big. I'm going to hold shift and just resize that. So what we've got is we've got this thing called track matte. Track matte allows us to kind of reveal what's beneath it or vice versa. But let's just work with what we've got at the moment. We've got track matte. Press F4 on your keyboard and that'll bring up this little drop down. If you don't have F4, you can toggle switches down at the bottom. Then I'm going to make sure that my layer is beneath my stinger. I'm going to select my layer and I'm going to click alpha matte. What that's going to do is it's going to hide my stinger. See, the little eye has gone here. But now only the parts where the stinger is will be revealed from the wallpaper. So if I transition through, we can see that we've got this grey background, and then at some point you can see the logo. Now that, again, this works, and we could use something like this because you get that really cool like quick flash of the logo, but we can do better. So what I'm going to do is, with my position selected on my stinger, so if you don't have that, just click P. I'm going to select my keyframes, select them all, holding shift, click wallpaper, press P, go to the beginning, and I'm going to press V. And so what I've done there is I've copied the keyframes of the stinger and I've pasted them onto the wallpaper. So we have the wallpaper moving with the actual stinger itself. So we've always got the logo in the middle. Now that works, but it's not ideal. So what I want to do is I want to grab my keyframes, which they're still selected, but grab my keyframes, and I want to offset it a little bit. I still want it to move in, but I want it to be a little bit slower and faster in certain areas. So I've changed the keyframes. So the keyframe was at this point be here, at this point be here, at this point be here. So we've changed them a little bit so it catches up. Okay, that's not great. It snaps too quick. So what I'm going to do is maybe bring that there. Slow that down. we can do better than that. Bring the animation in a little bit quicker. Okay, so it doesn't actually catch up to when it's, we need that animation a lot closer. But this one needs to be a little bit further away. Let's go over here. What I'm trying to get is it's a feel where the animation kind of like slows down and then the logo itself catches up, but I don't want it to be too snappy. So I'm tweaking around with my keyframes just to get, you know, a sweet spot to see something that I'm happy with. So as you can see, you know, the animation comes in, the logo isn't there, and it's just catching up. But right now it just feels a little bit too quick for me. Hang on, let's see what that looks like. Yeah, that it's just a little bit too quick. That might work. Let's slow that one down a little bit. No, I want it to go off the page beforehand. Yeah, I think that works. I think it's maybe this keyframe, you know, where it was just going off the page wasn't great. So it catches up, and then the stinger just kind of takes over and disappears. I think I like that. Yeah, so you got that whole parallax feel going on. I wanted to leave that in there so you could find out, you know, like it's not, you can't just click on the keyframe and go, okay, that's going to work. You know, like you do have to tweak around and play with it. And, you know, my logo and your background is going to be completely different. So you can do some really cool effects with this, but that's basically what we've just done there. We've just selected a few keyframes and then played around with them until we're happy with it, you know, where we're at. Fantastic. Okay, so what we need to do now is we need to save this, obviously, and we need to export it. So export, add to render queue. Once I'm here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on lossless, and that brings up the options. So I'm going to click format and change this to QuickTime. Then I'm going to click on the channels and I'm going to select RGB plus alpha. Now the plus alpha bit says to After Effects, remember the transparent background. Otherwise you're going to have a black background and it'll just fill in all of the transparent background, all of the transparent pixels in black. We obviously don't want a black background because we want to see what our gameplay is. So RGB alpha just remembers the transparency. I'm going to select audio output and I'm just going to say off. Like there's no point in trying to export any sound. Click OK. I'm going to select the layer and I'm just going to name this as 2-layered transition. Click save, and then I'm just going to go ahead and click render. Brilliant. So now what we need to do is go ahead and open up OBS and we can get everything set up. So I've gone ahead and opened up my OBS studio, and what we've got here is we've got scene B, which is the intermission screen, and we've got scene A, which is our gameplay scene. So what I'm going to do is, before I get started, make sure that my scene transitions are set to cut. Now the reason I've got this is because if it's not cut, you get some like weird fade transitions or stinger transitions, and it interferes with it. So just make sure you got your scene transitions set to cut. Now I'm going to create a new scene and I'm going to call this transition itself. You can call this whatever you want. It's just something that I can reference later on. So I'll click OK, click on add a new source, click on media source, click on just name this transition because this is the actual transition file. So I'm going to browse and find that file. That file we call 2-layered transition. Then I'm going to create make sure that the tick next to restart playback when source becomes active is ticked, because that's very, very important, because we will turn on and off this transition quite a few times. So as you can see, there you go. Right, now what we're going to do is click add scene, and I want to add scene A. So this is where I'm adding like the main scene beneath my scene A. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click add new scene transition scene, and I'm going to say okay, add, and I'm going to select 3 scenes here. The 3 scenes that I'm selecting is scene A for our main scene, transition scene itself, and then scene B, which is our intermission scene. Okay, so let's just reorder these. What I want on the very bottom is our intermission screen. So, or whatever scene you're transitioning to. So we're calling this scene B at the moment. So scene B at the very bottom. In the middle, you want transition itself, and then at the very top, you want scene A. So to demonstrate what's going to happen is we will, when we click our button on our stream deck in a second, what we'll do is we'll have an action which says hide scene A, show transition itself, then transition to the scene B. Now, if I show the transition itself, that's what we get, because obviously transition itself is the scene A with the transition on top of it. So what we want to do is click on our transition scene, right click, filters, add a new filter, and select chroma key. I'm going to leave all of the settings to be the same, and now what we'll have when I activate this is it's showing that main scene from our transition, but it's also got the transition on top of it, which means it's showing the green. The green's going to come in, slide across, and that's going to reveal what's beneath it. So we should have the main scene in a second, the diagonal line come across, and the green, which has now been chroma keyed, will be revealing the webcam. So if I click on that, perfect. Now obviously the issue that we've got is once that transition finishes, we've got no action to say like move to another scene. So that's where Stream Deck will allow us to say, right, okay, once that transition is finished, deactivate the scene and switch to scene B. So that's what we're going to set up now. So you want to go ahead and just open up your Stream Deck or any other macro software, as long as you can do multi-actions. So I've opened up my OBS, and what I've got here is a multi-action. That's just underneath Stream Deck. I've got a multi-action. What I want to do is drag that on, and it allows me to create multiple actions in a single click. So I click this button, do this, then do this, then do this, then do this, essentially. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drag on OBS Studio, and I'm going to click scene. So when I click on this button, the first thing I want you to do is switch to the transition scene. So I could be on my main, jump to the transition scene. So then I'm just going to name this to transition to jump to transition scene. Then what I want to do is I want to bring in a source, and I want to activate the transition itself. So within here, I'm going to go there, and I want to activate the transition itself. So after we've jumped to the transition, we're going to activate it, because at the very end we're going to deactivate it before we finish all of these actions up. So once I've activated it, so let's name this activate transition itself. Then I'm going to create another source, and I'm going to say deactivate the main scene. So in this, deactivate scene A. So we've got the main scene up top. Now this is one of those fixes that we can get to stop that flashing, because what we can do is we can add a delay in between here. Sometimes what you'll find is actually this resolves it, but if it doesn't for any reason, once we activated it, we could drag in a delay in between these two layers and say, right, okay, activate it, wait for that flash to finish, give it like 25 milliseconds, then deactivate this main scene. That's why we've got multiple transition scenes. So then what I'm going to do is click on drag in a delay, and this is the delay in the length of time that your transition happens. So once it reaches the end of its once the scene goes from over here to over here, once it's finished, now obviously if we don't transition in time, it's going to reset and it's going to go back to the main scene. So we want to, once you've hit over here after X amount of milliseconds, swap to the scene scene B, sorry. So we want to do maybe 1700 milliseconds. We'll check it in a second and see if that works. So let's just go. Let's finish this off. Then what we want to do is we want to click on source. We want to sorry, not source. We want to click on scene, and we want to switch to scene B. So our intermission scene. Then we want to do some housekeeping, and we want to deactivate the transition itself on the transition scene. and then we want to activate scene A. So these are the two scenes that we disabled. So let's deactivate transition, activate scene A. Okay, so just to recap, we jump to the scene, jump to the transition scene. That's why we have the cut. So there's no like, when you go from scene A to the transition scene, there's no like weird fade or stinger or anything like that. So we cut to that scene. Then what we want to do is activate the transition itself. So we want to activate that, so that's where we enable it, and that's when the replay starts, so the transition will start going across. That's why it's important to have that tick. Then we want to deactivate the scene A, and that's the reason that we have scene A on there, is because the main overlay will sit on top of everything to hopefully reduce that flash or flicker. Then we want to wait for a little bit period of time, so in this case it's 1.7 seconds, and then we will switch to scene B. Once we've switched to scene B, we will do some housekeeping, so we will deactivate the transition, so that next time when it gets enabled, it will replay again. And then we want to activate scene A again next time that we jump to the scene, that it's sat on top of it, so we don't have that weird flicker. So assuming that we've got our time right, if we click this button, let's just drag that over there. If we click this button, let's go to scene A. So we get a weird flash. So what I want to do is just make sure that the transition overrides are set to none. That's good. Okay, so what we need to do is just make sure that our timings are right. So what we've got here, let's just change that to 2100 milliseconds, and I'm going to transition. So I'll click on A. Okay, so something didn't go right. So what have we done wrong? The transition itself is finished. So if I click on transition, okay, so A isn't being hid. Have we? Okay, we've done it from scene A. That makes sense. So transition scene, we want to make sure that A gets deactivated. Click on that. Brilliant. Okay, so what we've done is, just to recap again, we are on our A scene, we jump to our transition scene, we activate this scene here, then we deactivate this scene, then we wait for a period of time, then we switch to scene B, because that's what we've got here and that's what we're going to here. Then once we've done that, is we just want to reverse what we've just done with activating and deactivating these layers. So again, click on the button, click on scene A, click on my multi-action, and we get a flawless stinger transition, which has got multiple layers. We've got two scenes and a stinger with Paralax in the middle. So everyone, I hope that makes sense. We have created a stinger with multiple layers. We have created a Paralax. We've set that up in OBS, and we've set it up in streamdeck, and we've rectified any issues where we'd have like the flickering or the blinking issues. And we've also come up with two solutions. One is to increase the length of time in After Effects, and the other is to obviously separate it into multiple transitions. Now, this goes without saying that we've only set it up for one transition, going from one place to another place. If you wanted to set it up to go backwards, you'd have to just rinse and repeat that process and just go through creating your different scenes on your different transitions and setting up your multi-actions. If you do have any questions or any comments, please feel free to leave them down below, and I'll try and get back to everyone as quickly as possible. But until next time, take it easy.